I'm Alfonso Winker.
And I'm Trina Olson. And together, we're the co-founders of Team Dynamics.
And this is Behave.
Hey, Alfonso, I thought we could pop on and talk quickly to our Behave listeners who are really thinking about work and are thinking about time off, are thinking about operating in a context where COVID-19 exists. We are in the middle of a national and international solidarity and conversation about race, racial injustice, and violence at the hands of police. And for a lot of people, they in the past have celebrated a thing on calendars and that banks closed down for that is called both the 4th of July and Independence Day. You run a business. How are you wrestling with that this year?
One of the things that I practice is not assuming people celebrate or have the same enthusiasm for days that I consider to be a holiday. So one of the things that folks should pay attention to is if you are a person who is choosing to do some sort of celebration for the 4th of July or what is called American Independence Day, check in with yourself and see if your impulse to ask people about their plans for the 4th or wishing, or if you're trying to wish people a happy 4th of July or happy Independence Day, if you know whether or not that is an important day and a celebratory day for that person for a bunch of reasons. One, there are millions of people who live in the United States who are immigrants, forced or have been part of forced migration, or whose homes are colonies of the US for whom they don't celebrate that day as a day of independence, even though they happen to be people who live in the geography that's currently called the United States. Secondly, the stealing of and claiming of this continent for European colonizers and settlers represented freedom for some people, specifically white male landowners, and a decrease in freedoms or liberties for women, for people of color, in particular Black slaves and indigenous original inhabitants of this land. And so what we are in fact celebrating is the demarcation of the day that white colonizers decided they were free from having to pay European monarchs taxes for the land that they stole.
I'm going to just breathe because you're saying true things in a row that are not what was taught to me as a young white girl growing up in the US. I know that what you're saying is true, and it continues to be hard to hear. I'm going to breathe again because I think some of what we've heard too, and we will link to our episode that's entirely about how you achieve a goal as a workplace of giving people time off because they absolutely need it in a way that's more equitable than just obsessing over bank, Christian, or colonizing holidays. It can feel for folks like we're taking away a part of our own personal history or celebrations, or like you're taking all of the fun things about being out in the summer and going to the lake or eating potato salad or having a barbecue, or it also feels like I'm supposed to feel bad about ever having felt good on a day. What do I do with that?
To be clear, I am, and we are not people who are against joy or celebration or marking important days with gathering. We are inviting folks to get closer to the truth about what it is we celebrate and why we celebrate it. So what are we upholding by saying most salaried workers get this day off?
Right. And if we have these clear goals of, to me, they're dual goals that go together always. So the first is all research shows that time off is good for workers. Of course it is, right? We know that in our bodies, that we need to actually take breaks. We are not automatons. We are not computers. We actually have to rest in order to be good at our jobs. And then the second goal is to not hurt our employees for reasons that are totally unavoidable. And so for a lot of folks, it seems like Juneteenth as a holiday has just come into some folks' awareness. It is not actually a new celebration, but this idea of what can feel like Emancipation Day to some folks, especially folks in the Black community, thinking about the difference between American calendar New Year and the Lunar New Year in the Asian Pacific Island community, right? Thinking about Rosh Hashanah, thinking about Eid, thinking about Ramadan, the idea that whether it's high holy days or it is for you, I know you consider your birthday a personal holiday. It's really life-giving to you to have that day off.
It's very important.
It's very important too. So it's this idea that great news. If we are just sort of more open and honest about what days off would feel meaningful to people, people could choose. And I think it's this idea that, when we move to more of a paid time off, floating holiday kind of a calendar, you just make it much more likely that people can get filled up in the way that they want to. And as a reminder, none of the holidays that I celebrate, for example, if they were holidays I've celebrated in my youth, they're not being taken away from me. So if that's where I want to put my PTO day, cool. So it's that reminder that nothing bad is going to happen by giving smart adults more choices. In fact, some really solid conversations might emerge of learning about days that I didn't know were important to my colleagues. Like this year, Andrea taught me about a date that she celebrates with her family as somebody who grew up in Puerto Rico. I didn't even know about that day. But because she took that day off and she taught that to her team, I got to learn more about Andrea.
So if you're someone that has access to time off this summer and is choosing to do some sort of celebration, take a few minutes, reflect on what is the meaning of this day to you, what is the history or what are the stories you've been told about what the meaning of the day is, what's more of the truth, in particular the Black, Indigenous, and people of color related truth related to the history of those days, and think about if promoting those celebrations is inbounds or out of bounds for you. Thanks for hanging out and make good choices. I mean, if anybody needs water, condoms, or a mask, call me.
Hello.
I can help.
You're an essential worker.